Hi, welcome to Talking the Secret Doctrine. My name is Dr. Don Franklin Shepherd, and today we will be looking at the Occult Catechism in the first volume of the Secret Doctrine on pages 11 and 12. So let us go ahead and begin. She asks, what is it that ever is? Space, the eternal Anupadaka. Well, we know what space is because on pages 4 and 5, she used potential space and she used abstract space. The potential space being the essential point as the third logos in its potential aspect, and abstract space being the second logos as Mula Prakriti, which eventually transforms into an active space as Prakriti. The next question. What is it that ever was? The germ in the root. So we know that the germ is the third logos, the central point, and the root in this case is the second logos, the dull black round, Mula Prakriti. And the next question. What is it that is ever coming and going? The great breath. The great breath is ever coming and going for this reason. Along the plane of the immaculate white disk, the central point emerges. It's coming and going. After it emerges, it sweeps through the dull black ground. It's still coming and going within the dull black ground. After sweeping through the dull black ground, it explodes on the other side as the shining central point of light. In this case, we see that the central point is constantly coming and going, whether in light, whether in darkness. The next question. Then, there are the three eternals? No, the three are one. So H.P. Blavatsky is seeing the three of these subjects, the immaculate white disk, the dull black ground, and the central point, as one. One does not separate them so long as we are looking at them from the perspective of the mundane egg. She continues in the next paragraph. Explain Olanu. The one is an unbroken circle ring with no circumference, for it is nowhere and everywhere. This is the first logos, the immaculate white disk. It is nowhere in the sense that when we are looking at it from the perspective of the mundane egg, it is beyond us. But it is everywhere, because when we reconnect with the third logos, with the central point of light, when we move back through the darkness of space, when we once again are gliding along the plane of the immaculate white disk, we can try to penetrate the immaculate white disk. And when we do, nowhere, its ever-stretching whiteness, becomes everywhere, all around us. She continues, describing the one in a different way. The one is the boundless plane of the circle, manifesting a diameter only during the Manvantaric periods. So the one in this case is the plane of the circle. It's manifesting a diameter during the Manvantaric periods. So the one in this case is in fact Mula Prakriti, the second logos, which is going to shift into an active phase as the third logos, the Immaculate Mother Nature. Again, the one is described in a different way. The one is the indivisible point found nowhere, perceived everywhere during these periods. The one is the indivisible point. This is the central point potentially, but it must be remembered that the central point can also be described actively, and yet it is the one in both cases. She continues about the one. It is the vertical and the horizontal, the Father and the Mother. So the one is this sevenfold combination. This sevenfold combination of the mundane egg can be referred to as Paramatman. It is an entity. In one sense, it can be described as a central sun. In another sense, it can be described as a collection of central suns, and it is precisely in both these ways that H.P. Blavatsky talks about it in her other masterpiece, Isis Unveiled. She continues, the summit and base of the Father. The one is the summit and the base of the Father. Well, the summit of the Father is the Immaculate White Disk. From one perspective, the base of the Father is the central point, the first and the third logos. This is why oftentimes the first and the third logos are interchanged in religious doctrine. This is why in Christianity, God, the Father, and Jesus, the Son, are both one. She goes on, the one is the two extremities of the mother. The first extremity we've already discussed is Mula Prakriti, the second logos. The other extremity of the mother is Prakriti as the third logos, because it's from this Prakriti that we get all of its diffusion throughout the mundane egg. It reaches in reality nowhere, for the one is the ring is also the rings that are within that ring. So we have the mother as the immaculate nature of the third logos. She then diffuses out into the mundane egg. And so the mundane egg contains her in a pantheistic way. But in reality, the mother is nowhere, because it is Prakriti, the third logos, diffusing out into the 7 layers of the mundane egg. But all of this is something very different and illusory in relationship to Mula Prakriti as the second logos. For the one ring is the ring as also the rings that are within that ring. So at this point, we have 4 rings that we've mentioned so far. The first is the Immaculate White Disk as the first logos. The second is, in fact, Mula Prakriti, the dull black ground. Now, why would this be a ring? This is a ring because the central point is shooting through it, burrowing through it like an earthworm. And when one sees an earthworm burrowing through the earth, it forms rings. In a sense, where the central point is moving through the dull black ground is yet another ring. The third ring we have as the third logos is the central point itself, which explodes out from the darkness of space. And the fourth ring can be called Paramatman. And this, in fact, is the great central sun at the head of the sevenfold mundane egg. So here we have 4 rings. We have a quaternary. We have the original triad, first, second, and third logos, and we have it now in combination with the 4th ring, with Paramatman, the great central sun, as the 7th principle, the highest principle of the mundane egg that is tinctured by the central point. She continues that there is light in darkness and darkness in light. Indeed, there is light and darkness. The Immaculate White Disk is in darkness by the dull black ground. The first logos is in darkness by the second logos. And there's darkness in light. When the central point blasts through the dull black ground, the light of the central point hides the dull black ground. The dull black ground is covered in light. So much so that so many beings in the mundane egg cannot perceive it. She goes on the breath, which is eternal. This process is happening endlessly because the central point is going from a condition of vibrating to no vibrating, expanding to contracting. It proceeds from without inwardly. It, in this case, being oneness. Oneness is proceeding in different ways. when it is everywhere, and from within outwardly, when it is nowhere. This is all a reference to the immaculate white disk. It's all a reference to the fact that when we're outside of the immaculate white disk, it's nowhere. But when we're able to enter it, when we're able to experience it, it's everywhere. She goes on. It expands and contracts. She's now referring to the movement from the potentiality of the central point to the actuality, the activity of the central point, exhalation and inhalation. When it expands, the mother diffuses and scatters. So here we have the mother. The mother in this case is not necessarily Mula Prakriti, but rather the Immaculate Mother Nature of the third Logos, because it is this Immaculate Mother Nature that is expanding and diffusing into the mundane egg. When it contracts, the mother draws back and ingathers. And in this case, Prakriti, as the third Logos, ingathers into Mula Prakriti, the second Logos. This produces the periods of evolution, Manvantara, and Pralaya. So we have a certain reference point for when we're going to begin to look at the dawn of differentiation when we eventually examine time scales. This produces the period of evolution of dissolution, Manvantara and Pralaya, and then she explains what's going on with the dawn of differentiation. The germ is invisible and fiery. So we have the third Logos shooting out from the Immaculate White Disk, invisible and fiery, invisible to those who can't see it. The root, the plane of the circle, is cool. So here we see that Blavatsky is showing the third Logos shooting across the plane of the first Logos. But during evolution of Manvantara, her garment is cold and radiant. So Prakriti, as the third Logos, has to wear a garment as well. And she wears that garment in the mundane egg. In fact, Prakriti wears many garments in the mundane egg. These are the various central suns. These are the various solar suns, like the solar sun in our solar system. H.P. Blavatsky continues, her breath, hot breath, is the father who devours the progeny. The hot breath of the father devours the progeny, meaning everything goes back into the Immaculate White Disk at a certain point. And he devours the progeny, the many-faced elements, heterogeneous. That is, he is devouring the progeny of the mother, of the Immaculate Mother, who has diffused everything from Prakriti into the mundane egg, and ultimately it returns to the Immaculate White Disk, and leaves the single-faced ones homogeneous. So here we have a very clear reference where H.P. Blavatsky is separating out the threefold logoi from the sevenfold mundane egg. In this particular case, the sevenfold mundane egg is being referred to as heterogeneous, and the threefold logoi are being referred to as homogeneous. Finally, cool breath is the mother who conceives, forms, brings forth, and receives them back into her bosom to reform them at the dawn of the day of Brahma or Manvantara. So we know that when we're reading the Occult Catechism and we're trying to understand the dawn of differentiation, we're dealing with this period as we're shifting from the second Logos into the third Logos. And we'll deal with this issue later on when we actually deal with the time periods in the Secret Doctrine. I hope this helps. The Occult Catechism is a very complicated catechism, but I think that this provides some ideas for thought. Thank you so much for being here. I'll see you again next time.